When you hear the words conflict in schools, what comes to mind? Probably not something good, right? But what if it's actually a necessary part of growth? Today, we're going to dig into why understanding conflict is absolutely crucial for creating schools where everyone can really, truly thrive.
So let's just start with this big question. A school is supposed to be a safe space for learning, for discovery. But what actually happens when that space turns into a conflict zone? The answer? Well, it gets to the very heart of why we need to talk about this.
All right, so here's our game plan. First, we'll look at why conflict is just a reality in schools. Then we'll unpack what's causing it. After that, we'll explore the ripple effect it has on everyone. Before, and this is the important part, we shift to solutions and how to build a much more positive school climate.
Okay, first things first. It's so easy to think that any conflict means something has gone wrong, but the truth is, conflict is pretty much a given anywhere you have people with different goals and ideas coming together, and schools, they are definitely no exception.
You know, when we use the word conflict here, we're not just talking about a simple argument in the hallway. We're talking about institutional conflict. This is a much deeper kind of friction that comes from things like competing interests, different values, or needs that just aren't being met. It's woven into the very fabric of the organization.
And this friction, it can pop up literally anywhere. Just think about all the moving parts in a school. You've got students competing with each other, students and teachers disagreeing on grades, teachers and parents clashing over homework, even teachers and the administration bumping heads on school policy. Every single one of these relationships is a potential flashpoint.
Okay, so we've got a handle on what this conflict looks like. But now for the really big question. Why? What's really driving all these disagreements? Let's unpack the causes.
So the first thing to get your head around is that there's almost never a single, simple reason. Most of the time, conflicts are this messy combination of big picture, system-wide pressures and, those smaller person-to-person issues.
And when you actually break down the numbers, one thing just jumps right out. A massive 40% of school conflict comes from poor communication. That's huge. But look at the other big pieces of the pie. Not enough resources to go around, clashing values, and struggles over power. These are deep, systemic issues baked right into the school environment.
And this isn't just abstract stuff, right? This is what it actually looks like on the ground. It's when school policies are so vague, nobody knows what the rules are. It's departments fighting over a tiny budget. It's that veteran teacher whose style completely clashes with a new teacher down the hall. Or it's students who just feel like no one is listening to them. These are the real-world triggers.
So we've covered the what and the why. But what happens when these problems just don't get fixed? Well, that brings us to the ripple effect. Because these conflicts, they don't just disappear, they spread.
And this really is the critical question, isn't it? What is the true cost, the real price tag, when we fail to handle these conflicts? Let me tell you, it's a lot higher than most of us think.
The damage hits everyone. For students, it means more anxiety, less focus on learning, and feeling unsafe in a place that should feel like a second home. For teachers, it's a direct path to burnout, terrible morale, and why so many end up leaving the profession. And for the school itself, it creates a toxic environment, ruins its reputation, and just shatters the trust that holds the whole community together.
But, and this is a really big but, it absolutely does not have to end there. Not at all. This is where we make the pivot from the problem to the solution. So let's talk about the pathways to resolution.
And right here, this is a total game changer in how we think about this. The goal is not to eliminate conflict. Come on, that's impossible. The real sign of a healthy school is how well it can manage conflict constructively when it shows up.
So how do we actually do that? Well, it starts with a pretty clear, simple framework. First, you have to actually acknowledge the conflict exists. No sweeping it under the rug. Then, you got to get people talking openly. From there, you can work together to explore solutions. And finally, you make it official with an agreement, so everyone's on the same page moving forward. You know, every time a conflict happens, there's a fork in the road. You can go down the destructive path, which is all about blame, silence, and this I win, you lose attitude. Or you can choose the constructive path. That's where you focus on the problem, not the person. It's built on respect, dialogue, and trying to find a solution where everybody wins. And that choice, that constructive path, leads us perfectly into our final section. Because fixing one conflict is great, but the real goal is to build a culture where that becomes the default. So let's talk about building a positive climate. At the end of the day, it really all boils down to this. The way a school community chooses to handle its disagreements is the very foundation that a healthy, thriving, amazing learning environment is built on. And when that culture starts to take hold, the change is just incredible. It's like the mirror image of all that negative stuff we talked about. Students feel safer, and they learn crucial life skills. Teachers actually enjoy their jobs more and work together better. And the school? It becomes this strong, resilient community that can finally focus on its real mission, learning.
There's this quote that just absolutely nails it. The quality of a school as a learning community is determined by how its members deal with their differences. It's not about not having differences. It's about how you handle them. That's what defines everything.
So I'll leave you with this final question to chew on. In your own community, your own school, what's the very first tangible step you can take, starting today, to build a better, more constructive culture for handling conflict? Thanks for tuning in.